The first time the alarm went off at 3:14 a.m. and cleared itself before I even reached the panel, I told myself it was a glitch. The second time, I told myself the same thing, a little less convincingly. By the fourth time, I stopped telling myself anything at all, because a man who spent 35 years installing security systems for a living does not get to believe in coincidences. Not in his own house. Not on a system he built with his own hands. My name is Marcus Feld. I'm 62 years old, and until I retired last year, I ran Feldlock Security out of a storefront on Eastern Avenue in Baltimore. 35 years wiring alarm panels, motion sensors, and camera systems in a half the row houses and small businesses in this city. I know what a real malfunction sounds like. I know what one looks like in a log file. And what I was looking at, for separate nights in a row, was not a malfunction. It was somebody with legitimate access, using it at hours nobody legitimate has any business being awake. Part 1. The house that watches itself. My wife Renata and I have been married 36 years. We raised our daughter Jenna in the house we still live in, a narrow brick row home on Fate Avenue in Canton that I wired myself back in 1997, back when home security still meant a keypad by the door and a decal on the window that mostly worked through intimidation. Over the years I upgraded it piece by piece. Cameras, door sensors, a panel that logs every entry and exit with a timestamp down to the second. It's not a fancy system. It's a thorough one, which in this business is worth more. Jenna is 33. She married a man named Colin Vance 5 years ago, and for the first 2 years I liked him fine. Quick with a joke, good with his hands in that half-competent way men get when they've watched enough videos to be dangerous, and genuinely kind to Renata in the specific way that matters to a mother remembering her allergies, asking about her garden, showing up early to help her carry groceries, even when nobody asked him to. I want to be fair about that, because everything that came after makes it easy to forget there was a version of him worth liking. About 3 years ago, Colin left a stable job managing a warehouse to start an online business, reselling refurbished electronics. He called it an arbitrage model, which is the kind of phrase that should have worried me the first time I heard it, and somehow didn't. For a while it seemed to be working. Then, sometime last year it stopped. I didn't know how badly until much later. What I noticed first was smaller. The kind of thing you only notice if you're the sort of man who checks his own system logs the way other men check the weather. Renata and I had given Colin a key and the alarm code back when he and Jenna first got married, mostly so he could let himself in when he came by to help with yard work or fix something on the porch. He'd use it maybe a dozen times over 5 years, always during daylight, always log clean, enter at 10:14 a.m., disarm, do whatever he came to do, rearm, leave. Normal. Boring. Exactly what you want a security log to look like. Then, in February, I started seeing entries that weren't boring at all. Part 2. The nights nobody slept in. The first one was a Tuesday. 3:14 a.m. The panel logged a disarm using Colin's code, followed 90 seconds later by a rearm. No motion sensor triggers in between. No door sensor triggers, either, which meant either the system glitched in a way I'd never seen it glitch in 20 years of running that exact hardware, or somebody had disarmed the alarm from outside the house entirely, using the mobile app, and never actually come inside at all. I checked the app login history the next morning. Same phone number tied to Colin's account since 2021. Login at 3:11 a.m. logout at 3:16. I didn't say anything to Renata yet. I told myself I was going to figure out what it meant before I turned it into something that scared her for no reason. That's the kind of restraint that feels responsible right up until it stops being restraint and starts being denial. And I want to be honest that I sat somewhere in that gray area for almost 3 weeks. The second incident was the following Sunday. Same pattern. Disarm, no motion, rearm, all inside 4 minutes, all in the dead middle of the night. The third was 11 days after that. By the fourth, in early March, I'd stopped assuming anything and started keeping a private log of my own, in a notebook, the old-fashioned way, because notebooks don't sync to any account somebody else might be watching. Well, I couldn't figure out why. Nothing was missing. I walked every room after each incident, opened every drawer Renata would let me open without asking questions I wasn't ready to answer yet. The TV was still there. Renata's jewelry, modest as it is, was still in its box. My late father's old fishing gear, which nobody but me has ever cared about, was untouched in the basement. Then I remember the safe. It's bolted into the floor of my workshop in the basement. The same workshop where I used to test alarm hardware before installs. Now mostly a place I go to feel useful. Inside it, some paperwork, a couple of insurance documents, and my father's coin collection. 41 coins. Most of them nothing special, but 6 of them, a set of Morgan silver dollars in near mint condition that had been appraised 18 months earlier, mostly out of curiosity, at just over $34,000. I opened the safe on a Thursday afternoon in mid-March, 3 days after the 4th nighttime disarm, half expecting to find it empty. It wasn't. Every coin was exactly where it should be. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because a man doesn't disarm a house at 3 a.m. 4 times in 6 weeks, take nothing, and walk away satisfied. A man does that because he's checking something, confirming a location, making sure a thing he plans to take is still there before he commits to taking it. Part 3. What I found in the recycling. I call my oldest friend, Danny Okafor, that Thursday night. Danny and I worked together on and off for 20 years. He ran the alarm monitoring side of a competing outfit before he retired, and if there's a man in this city who understands security logs better than I do, it's him. He picked up on the second ring, the way he always does. Danny, Marcus, it's late for you. Marcus, Danny, I need you to look at something with me. I think somebody's been accessing my house. There was a pause, the kind that told me he was already taking this seriously before I'd finished explaining. Danny, who is access? Marcus, Colin. Danny, after a beat, okay. First question, has anything actually gone missing? Marcus, no. That's what's got me sitting here at midnight instead of sleeping. Nothing's gone. But he's been in that app 4 times in 6 weeks. Always the same hours, always short. Whatever he's doing, he's not doing it yet. Danny, then he's planning something, and he needs to know the terrain before he moves. You worked enough break-ins over the years to know that pattern better than I do. Marcus, somebody doesn't case a house they're not eventually going to touch. That word, case, sat on my chest for the rest of the night. I'd spent 3 decades on the other side of that word, installing systems specifically to catch people doing exactly what my own son-in-law appear to be doing to me. The next piece came from somewhere I never expected, the recycling bin. Renata does most of the household recycling, but that Friday, I was the one hauling the bin to the curb, and a torn envelope caught my eye, half buried under a cereal box. It was addressed to Colin, forwarded from an old address from an insurance company I didn't recognize. Not our homeowner's carrier, a specialty firm that, when I looked it up later that night, specialized almost entirely in scheduled personal property coverage. Jewelry, collectibles, rare coins. I don't know why it was in our recycling instead of his own house 4 miles away. My best guess, and it's only a guess, is that Colin had been at our place a few days earlier helping Renata clear out the garage and simply tossed something from his own bag into ours without thinking twice about where trash goes once it leaves your hand. I fished it out. It was a partial statement, water damaged at the corner, but legible enough. A scheduled items writer. 6 coins, individually itemized, matching my father's Morgan silver dollars almost line for line. Descriptions, mint years, even a reference to the exact appraisal I'd had done 18 months ago, an appraisal Colin had no legitimate reason to have ever seen. Coverage amount, $34,500. Effective date, 6 weeks earlier, the same week the first nighttime disarm hit my log. I sat on my own back steps in the cold for a long time holding that torn piece of paper, doing the kind of math you don't want to be right about. Colin didn't own those coins. He had no legal claim to them, which meant there was only one way a man insures something he doesn't own. He plans to make it disappear from somewhere else first, and then produce a paper trail proving it was his all along. Part 4. The trap I didn't tell my wife about. I still hadn't told Renata. I want to be honest about why. Not because I doubted what I was seeing, but because once I said it out loud to her, there would be no version of our family that got to stay the way it was before I said it. I wanted to be certain first. I wanted proof solid enough that nobody, including Colin, could argue their way around it later. So I did something I'd never once done in 35 years of installing other people's security systems. I built a second one, invisible to the first, inside my own house. I ordered a standalone camera, the kind that runs entirely on its own cellular connection. No Wi-Fi, no tie-in to my existing panel, no login Colin could ever reach, even if he had every password in the house memorized. I mounted it inside an old speaker cabinet in the basement workshop, angled to the safe, powered by a battery pack I checked, and swapped every 4 days. Nobody but Danny and I knew it existed. Then I did the hardest part. I let 3 more weeks pass exactly the way the 6 weeks before it had passed. Sunday dinners. Small talk about Colin's business picking back up. Renata fussing over whether he was eating enough. Me saying nothing at all while I watched my son-in-law sit at my table and eat food my wife cooked. 3 weeks after I found proof he was planning to steal from us. Danny asked me once, over coffee, how I was managing to sit across from the man and say nothing. Danny, I don't know how you're doing that. Marcus, I really don't. Marcus, 35 years installing alarms teaches you one thing above everything else. You don't spring the trap before it's set. You spring half-finished. You just warn the person and lose the evidence for nothing. Danny, and if he moves before you're ready? Marcus, then the camera catches him moving. Either way, I win. I just want to win clean. The 5th nighttime disarm came on a Tuesday in early April. 2:58 a.m., logged the same as all the others. This time, though, I had a second set of eyes watching that my son-in-law didn't know existed. I didn't check the footage that night. I made myself wait until morning because I didn't trust what I might do at 3 in the morning with fresh anger in my hands, and because Danny had told me plainly, whatever you catch it clean, you don't touch anything, and you call a lawyer before you call your daughter. Part 5. What the camera saw. The footage was 11 minutes long. Colin, letting himself in through the back door with his own key at 2:56 a.m., moving through the dark kitchen with the small confidence of a man who's walked that path a dozen times, straight down the basement stairs to my workshop. He didn't go to the safe that night. Not yet. He stood in front of it for nearly 90 seconds. Phone light up, photographing the model number and the bolt pattern on the floor. Then he left the same way he came, rearmed the system from the app once he was back in his car, and drove off. I watched it 4 times before I called anyone. Not because I doubted what I was seeing, because some part of me kept hoping the 5th viewing would show something different than the first. It never did. I called Danny first, then a lawyer named Priscilla Odom that Danny had used years back for a business dispute. Sharp, unhurried, the kind of attorney who makes you feel steadier just by how slowly she talks. I brought her the footage, the torn insurance statement, my notebook of dates and timestamps going back 6 weeks. Priscilla, after watching the footage twice, Mr. Feld, I want to make sure you understand exactly what you have and what you don't have yet. What you have is compelling evidence of unauthorized entry and what looks very much like preparation for insurance fraud. What you don't have yet is proof he's actually taken anything, because as of this footage, he hasn't. That matters, because it changes what we can do right now versus what we can only threaten to do. Marcus, what do you recommend? Priscilla, first, do not confront him yet. If you tip him off, he either abandons the plan and you never get to prove intent in a way that protects you long-term, or worse, he accelerates and does something rash. Second, I'm going to reach out to the insurance carrier directly, quietly, and inform them the scheduled items rider was taken out on property he does not own and has no insurable interest in. That alone can get the policy flagged and frozen before claims ever filed. Third, we document everything through me from this point forward, so nothing that happens next can be twisted into you tampering with evidence or setting him up unfairly. 2 days later, Priscilla confirmed the insurance company had opened its own internal fraud review the moment she flagged the mismatch between the policyholder and the actual owner of record. The policy was suspended pending investigation, meaning even if Colin had gone through with taking the coins, there would have been no payout waiting for him at the end of it. He just didn't know that yet. Part 6. Sunday dinner. I waited 2 more weeks after that, mostly because Priscilla asked me to, and partly because I needed the time myself to figure out how I wanted to say what I was about to say. Renata still didn't know. That was the hardest part of the whole 6 weeks. Not the fear, not the anger, but carrying something that large through every ordinary conversation with the woman I've been married to for 36 years, and not being able to set it down. I told her on a Thursday night, finally, sitting at our own kitchen table with the lights low. I showed her the footage once. She watched it without a word, her hand flat on the table the whole time, and when it ended she sat very still for almost a full minute. Renata, how long have you known? Marcus, 6 weeks. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Renata, quiet, not angry, something closer to grief. Does Jenna know? Marcus, I don't think so. I think she's about to find out the same night we do. We decided together it would happen at Sunday dinner. Not because I want an audience, but because Priscilla said a controlled setting, in our own home, with everyone present, was safer and cleaner than any version of this happening somewhere I couldn't control the room. Colin arrived that Sunday the way he always did, a six-pack under one arm, a joke about traffic on Boston Street already halfway out his mouth before he was through the door. Jenna trailed behind him, tired from a long week at her hospital job, happy in the specific, unguarded way people are right before their whole understanding of a person gets rewritten in front of them. We made it through dinner. I wanted Renata's cooking to be the last normal thing that happened at that table for a while. Then, once the plates were cleared, I set my laptop down and turned it around. Marcus, Colin, I want to show you something, and then I want you to explain it to your wife because I'm not going to be the one who does that part for you. I play the footage. 11 minutes, start to finish, no interruptions. Jenna's face went through something I hope I never have to watch again. Confusion first, then disbelief, then a kind of stillness that was worse than either. Colin, voice unsteady. That's not. I can explain that. Marcus, I have 6 weeks of entry logs showing the exact same pattern before that night. I have an insurance statement for a scheduled items rider on coins. You have never owned a single day of your life, taken out the same week the disarm entry started. I have a lawyer who's already flagged the policy with the carrier, which means whatever you were planning to do with those coins, there was never going to be a payout waiting on the other end of it. Colin looked at Jenna. Jenna did not look back. Jenna, very quiet. You were going to steal from my parents. Colin, I wasn't going to steal from them. I was going to... The business is underwater, Jenna. We're 11 weeks behind on the mortgage. I thought if I could just... I thought your dad would never even notice 6 old coins were gone. And the insurance would. Marcus, the insurance would have paid you, Colin, for coins that were never yours. That's not a loan you were too proud to ask for. That's fraud, twice over, against an insurance company, and against your own family. Nobody said anything for a long time. Renata reached over and put her hand over Jenna's, and Jenna let her. Part 7. What happened after we did not press criminal charges? Priscilla laid out exactly what we could pursue if we wanted to. Insurance fraud carries real exposure under Maryland law, and unauthorized access to a monitored security system with intent to remove property has its own separate criminal weight. I sat with that option for several days. In the end, Renata and I decided together that the outcome we actually wanted wasn't Colin in a courtroom. It was Colin never having the opportunity to do this to anyone, in our family again, and Jenna knowing the full truth of who she'd built a life with, so she could decide what to do with that information herself rather than have it decided for her by a jury. Priscilla formally notified the insurance carrier that the policy would not be pursued as a fraud claim through the courts, but remained flagged and voided permanently in their internal system, which meant any future attempt by Colin to insure property he didn't legitimately own would already carry a red flag before it ever reached underwriting. We changed every code and access credential in the house within the week. Colin was removed from the account entirely. No key, no app login, no exceptions. Jenna moved out of their apartment 6 weeks later. She's staying in the guest room here for now while she figures out what comes next, and Renata has never once made her feel like a burden for it. Colin reached out twice by text, both times apologizing in a way that still somehow centered his own stress over the business rather than what he'd actually done. Jenna hasn't responded to either. The coins are still in the safe. I had Danny reinforce the mounting bolts anyway, more out of habit than necessity at this point. Some nights I still go down to the workshop and just look at that little camera tucked into the old speaker cabinet, the one that caught 11 minutes that changed everything, and I think about how strange it is that 35 years of installing systems to protect other people's homes ended up being the exact skill set that protected my own family from someone already living inside it. Part 8. A regular Sunday. Last weekend, Danny came by the way he does most Sundays now, coffee in one hand, already talking before he was through the door. Danny, you still checking that basement camera every night? Marcus, every other night now. I'm cutting back. Danny, laughing, progress. Jenna was at the kitchen table doing a crossword with Renata, the two of them arguing gently over a 5-letter word for betrayal that neither of them could land on. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching them, before Renata glanced up and waved me in for coffee. Renata, Marcus, come settle this. 5 letters. Starts with AT. I thought about it for a second, looking at my wife and my daughter at a table that had, 6 months ago, Been a place where I sat in silence collecting evidence against a man eating dinner 3 feet away from me. Marcus. Trust. Doesn't fit, but it's the only word I can think of right now. Renata rolled her eyes at me, the way she has for 36 years, and went back to the puzzle. Jenna almost smiled, the first real one I'd seen from her in weeks. And for the first time in a long time, the house was quiet in the good way. No hidden logins. Number 3 a.m. disarms. Just a Sunday morning, and a family that finally knew exactly who was allowed inside it.